listen what I say. You want to see her again? Get the money. $100,000. I'll smash her head wide open. Get the money, Alan. $100,000.
August the 7th of 1992 was an unremarkable day for Martha Doe and her husband, Alan Roberts. The couple had been married for 43 years. They had no idea that they would soon find themselves trapped in an unbelievable web of deceit. That morning, Alan and Martha sat down for breakfast together, just as they had done for the past 43 years. Around 9:30 a.m., Alan left home to meet with Sam Wagner, who was interested in buying a property he had been developing. Alan went to the meeting location and waited for about an hour before deciding that Sam was not coming. Alan spent the rest of the day laying sod at another property before returning home later that night. As he pulls into the driveway, he notices his wife's vehicle is still there, just as it should be. He finds the mail halfway into the garage before entering the home and finding it empty. Doe's asthma inhaler rests on the counter, causing Alan to worry about his wife's health. He rushes out to the garden to see if she might have suffered an asthma attack while tending to the plants, but his wife is nowhere to be found. Alan begins to panic, so he heads back inside with the intention of calling police. His hand reaches for the telephone as the ringtone pierces his body, sending shivers down his spine.
Hey, Alan. I got Martha Doe. You want to see her again? $100,000 in a plastic bag. Don't pay? I'll smash your head wide open. Get that money, Alan.
The mysterious caller would hang up without scheduling a drop point with the horrified Alan. After the call, Roberts would immediately call police to the Eads, Tennessee home he shared with Martha Doe. Once authorities arrived, they searched a 150-acre property, but nothing would point them to the whereabouts of Martha. Investigators would place a recorder and tracer on Alan's phone in case the extortionist called again, and it wouldn't take long before he did. That same night, the man with the Asian accent called again, and authorities tracked that call to a nearby payphone. The man told Alan that he knew law enforcement was listening and that Doe was safe for now. Deputies rushed towards the payphone. Before the call ended, Roberts was ordered to remove and destroy the audio tape in his driveway. Suspecting someone might have been watching, Roberts switched the tape for an unused one before stomping it to pieces in his driveway. Shelby County deputies arrived at the payphone, but they were too late. The kidnapper was long gone. At the end of the night, Doe, her purse, and the $500 inside were not found. Locals could not believe something like this would happen in their small town, and especially to the Roberts. The couple founded Holiday Auto Parts in the early 60s and built the business into a chain of 6 stores in Memphis. Alan and Doe retired approximately 10 years before moving to Eads, where Alan spent his time running a home building business. They would be described as nice people, the best neighbors we ever had, and a cornerstone to the community. They were regulars at the Eads United Methodist Church and often participated in the Eads Civic Club. When a 74-year-old neighbor got sick, Doe made it a priority to take the woman food, while Allen plowed her garden. The disappearance was more surprising, since Eads was considered one of the safest places around. While the community was only 28 miles away from Memphis, locals did not have to worry about those big city problems. They usually did not make their way that far east. Many locals were worried that an outsider had kidnapped one of their own, but police would zone in on someone much closer to home. Alan Roberts would do the best he could to help his wife. Not long after the kidnapping, he spoke to the media and public at the Eads Community Center. As he stood in front of the small log building where he often enjoyed barbecues and square dances with his wife, he pleaded for her release, saying, "I make this plea for mercy and compassion from whoever is holding Doe. We have children, and my wife is my life. Doe has severe asthma, and if she doesn't receive daily medication, her life is in danger." Allen promised the kidnapper that he would meet their every demand if Doe was released unharmed. Meanwhile, investigators interviewed members of the Eads community to see if anyone noticed anything out of the ordinary. One man would say that there seemed to be tension between Doe and Allen at church before the kidnapping. Otherwise, they would hit a roadblock and come up empty. Authorities decided that it was best to start in the middle, work a circle outwards. Doe's husband, Alan Roberts, found himself at the center of the investigation. Investigators wondered if he had harmed his wife before getting an accomplice to make the ransom calls. Alan was surprised when he was asked to take a polygraph test, but he agreed and ultimately passed. Despite passing that test, Alan would remain the most likely suspect, but detectives would track down other leads. The Roberts couple had a substantial amount of money, leading investigators to suspect someone from outside of Tennessee might have kidnapped Doe for the money. They looked through DMV records and FBI databases for people named Sam Wagner. Several men with that name in other states were questioned and promptly eliminated, causing authorities to return to Alan Roberts. After a few weeks of an unsuccessful investigation, investigators came to the conclusion that Doe Roberts had been killed, and again they would turn to the husband for answers. The FBI teamed up with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office to search the Roberts property once again. This time, they were looking for something more sinister, including blood splatters. Allen continued cooperating with authorities while maintaining his innocence. The search would last for 2 whole days, but none of the items collected would test positive for blood. Some members of the Eads community were suspicious of the husband as well, since they felt Allen did not seem to be grieving for his wife. A few weeks after the disappearance, he had returned to square dancing, and he did not show emotion in front of the media. Investigators kept a close eye on Allen as he tried to continue with his life. Without sufficient evidence, Allen would not be charged, and things would quieten down. Just when the community started calming and a bit of normalcy was restored, the phone would ring once again.
Martha Doe is alive. Alan is involved. Alan paid for wife kidnap. Want to see Doe Roberts again? $100,000.
The mysterious Asian caller would strike again. In September, the caller took things to a new level. He would target other members of the community, as well as Doe's other relatives. He had two objectives. He wanted to convince people that Doe Roberts was still alive, and he wanted everyone to believe that Alan Roberts was involved in his wife's kidnapping. The caller would constantly tell listeners that Alan had a hand in his wife's disappearance. While he demanded money numerous times, he would never confirm a drop-off location, and caller ID information was not helpful either. The caller used several payphones in the Eads area, and that is all police had to go on. Since the stranger seemed comfortable in Eads, authorities suspected that he was an insider. By this point, Alan Roberts was desperate for information and to clear his name, so he put up a $25,000 reward for information regarding his wife's whereabouts. Alan sent a message to the kidnapper in a newspaper, telling him he had disconnected the FBI's call monitoring equipment so he could call freely. In December of 1992, the kidnapper called Doe's best friend, Melinda Lancaster. She would hold a makeshift press conference at the Eads Civic Center, saying, "I was in contact with a man last night who convinced me through a series of questions that only Doe would know that Doe is still alive." She suspected that the kidnapper wanted to work with her instead of a member of the Roberts family. Ultimately, that call would go nowhere. By March of 1993, the alleged kidnapper was getting more brazen and more desperate. WMC TV Channel 5 co-anchor Joe Birch would receive an anonymous call from a man claiming to be involved in the case.
Miss Joe Birch, Doe Roberts is alive. You want to save Doe Roberts? $80,000 in plastic bag.
It was unclear if Birch actually spoke with the same man, but the news anchor decided to record the call anyway, and he did so from a speakerphone. As a result, the quality was poor, and some of the caller's words were garbled. Birch tried to get the man to tell him as much as possible. When the conversation turned to setting up a ransom drop, the caller abruptly hung up. After discussing the tape with his boss and FBI agents, it was agreed that it should be aired in an attempt to flush out the kidnapper, and it worked. After the segment aired, John Birch received another call from the supposed kidnapper. He was angry and demanded that the station stop covering the case. Birch did something no one else could. He convinced the man to arrange a ransom drop. A reporter with the station went to the spot with $80,000, but the extortionist never showed. It was another injection of false hope. During one incident, the ransom caller made Alan name an intermediary to act as a go-between for them. He would choose Charles Lord, a leader at the Eads United Methodist Church, a retired comptroller at the Memphis Defense Distribution Depot, and a married man with 3 children. More importantly, he was a family friend. Like clockwork, calls started flowing in to Charles Lord. At one point, Lord called authorities to his home because he had something frightening to show them. Late one night, he heard a vehicle down by his cove. When that vehicle left, he checked the mailbox and found a mysterious letter inside. It had been pieced together with letters from elsewhere and glue. Charles allowed the ransom letter to be handled by others, meaning any evidence on the paper was tainted. All the fingerprints were analyzed, and none of them belonged to anyone out of the ordinary. As a result, investigators decided to install a camera pointing directly toward Lord's mailbox, hoping the kidnapper may return again. Wiretap equipment was installed on Lord's phone as well. Charles Lord would become a regular figure at the sheriff's office, stopping by to check on their progress. Unlike the other locals who had received calls from the Asian-sounding man, Lord had actually spoken with Doe Roberts as well, so he could confirm that she was still alive. There was only one slight hiccup. Despite authorities installing recording equipment, there was never any tapes of those calls. Another ransom letter with one of Doe's scarves arrived in Lord's mailbox, and authorities knew that they had caught their man on camera. Surprisingly and frustratingly, the camera pointing at the mailbox recorded nothing. The camera footage went blank at the time of the mysterious delivery, leaving investigators to believe someone had been tampering with their equipment. Alan Roberts would tell police about an odd incident involving Lord too. One night at the community center, Charles flagged down Alan, offering to help him get Doe back for money. Lord claimed he had underworld contacts, and there was information floating around about Doe's disappearance. He could get that information, but it would come at a price. His claims would never come to fruition and only fueled speculation that Charles Lord might have been involved in the disappearance of Martha Doe Roberts. Two of Doe's nephews would be called by the mysterious stranger, and they were told to bring ransom money to a local motel in Eads, Tennessee. Those men notified the FBI, hoping to catch the kidnapper red-handed. The detectives tasked with telling Charles Lord were unable to find their target, and it would soon become clear why. FBI agents watched outside as Lord arrived at the motel and met with the nephews in the room they had rented. Once again, the church treasurer would paint himself as a helpful figure. He told the nephews he was instructed by the kidnapper to go to the motel and pick up the money, but the nephews refused to give him the cash. They wanted to work directly with the kidnapper. Lord would leave empty-handed, but it was yet another nail in his coffin. The evidence against Charles Lord was stacking up, and financial records would soon uncover a possible motive. While sifting through Lord's financial records, investigators would find out that the church-going man was not a saint at all. Jail, religion, and other deterrences were not enough to stop Charles Lord from breaking the law. He had embezzled more than $150,000 from the Memphis Defense Depot, where he had retired several years prior. More surprising, he had embezzled approximately $75,000 from the Eads United Methodist Church, where he served as a treasurer. A criminal profiler described Lord as a pathological, manipulative liar who thought he was untouchable. FBI agents would attempt to use his ego against him when he was interviewed on August the 25th of 1993 at the FBI Memphis field office. They filled the room with boxes with Lord's name on them, and it wouldn't take long to get answers. However, Lord would once again claim he was helping the Roberts family. Alongside his attorney, he confessed to making some of the ransom calls, but claimed he only did so to help keep the investigation active for Doe's sake. Authorities would offer him a deal that he could not refuse. Take a polygraph test, pass, and be cleared forever. But if he failed, he would be subjected to additional interrogation. Charles Lord took the polygraph test and quickly found himself back in the interrogation room. It would take several hours for Lord to break down and tell law enforcement what happened. On August the 6th of 1992, Charles Lord called the Roberts house and spoke with Alan. He pretended to be a man by the name of Sam Wagner and claimed he was interested in buying property from Alan. They agreed to meet the following day, giving Lord plenty of time to carry out his devious plan. While Alan was away, Charles visited the Roberts home and he saw Doe outside with the mail. He told her Alan had been in a terrible accident and he would take her to him right away. Doe got into the vehicle before it pulled away from the scene. Along the way, Doe suffered a heart attack, so Charles dumped her body and purse. In the end, Charles Lord admitted that the almighty dollar drove his decisions. In exchange for taking the death penalty off the table, Lord promised to tell investigators where he dumped Doe's body. He told them he dumped the body in the Wolf River from a bridge in Fayette County, roughly 13 miles from the Roberts home. Authorities would search that river, but only find a safe taken in a prior robbery. Doe and her purse were nowhere to be found, leading detectives to suspect Lord had lied once again. Charles would be taken to the lake and told about the dangers the divers faced during the search. His next move would suggest that he at least had a little bit of compassion for others. He confessed once again, changing the details of the kidnapping and murder significantly this time. Lord explained he took Doe back to his house and tied her to a chair in a room above his garage. After unsuccessfully trying to kill the helpless 65-year-old woman with sleeping pills, he would try something a little more hands-on. Lord would rape Doe Roberts before grabbing a pillow and smothering her to death. He would then dump the woman's body in his backyard compost heap before covering her with a layer of lime and concrete in hopes of speeding up decomposition. On August the 30th of 1993, Charles Lord led authorities to Doe's body. It would take 2 hours for forensic anthropologists from the University of Tennessee to find the layers of concrete and lime. Then they would find Doe's hand before uncovering the rest of her body. Lord's attempt to speed up decomposition backfired. Doe was found on her back, her skin still intact, a hand in front of her face in a defensive position. There's a possibility that Martha Doe Roberts was alive when she was buried, meaning she could have suffered even longer. After spending months being the primary suspect in his wife's disappearance, Alan Roberts was finally able to lay his wife to rest. Martha Doe Roberts was born in Gibson County, Tennessee, on October the 12th of 1926. She was 65 years old at the time of her death and was buried at the Memorial Park Cemetery in Memphis. Ultimately, Charles Lord fell prey to money, the root of all evil. He had liabilities of $373,000 and owed 10 creditors. The Emory University graduate had filed a petition for Chapter 7 bankruptcy on July the 1st of 1993. His solution for his debt problem was to kidnap his friend's wife and extort their grieving husband. The deterrences of jail and religion were not enough to prevent Lord from becoming a kidnapping murderer. During Lord's confession to police, he was asked if he loved Doe Roberts. He would say, "One winter or spring when my wife was sick, when I was working, she came over one day and brought hot soup for lunch. Doe was a fine person." Even that wasn't enough for Charles Lord. He would kill an innocent woman and terrorize her husband for months because he needed money to pay his credit union and replace the funds he had stolen from his church. His wife Sylvia was at home when Charles buried Doe's body on their property, but he said she knew nothing about it. As for Sylvia, she had an explanation for her husband's illogical, callous behavior. In a statement, Sylvia would say that her husband had high blood pressure and it sometimes affects his mind. Nevertheless, Charles Lord pled guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated rape on September the 16th of 1993. He would be sentenced to life plus 20 years on those charges. The following year, Lord would be sentenced to 10 years and 5 months for a handful of financial crimes. Alan Roberts was not happy with the outcome, saying, "I was thinking they were going to reward the man with a plaque." Alan Crawford Roberts was born on November the 8th of 1926. After all was said and done, he would remarry a woman named Esther, and they would raise a dog named Sugar. He was a big fan of books, with some of his favorites coming from the Harry Potter series. He also enjoyed traveling the world, fishing, and gardening. Alan Roberts passed away on October the 16th of 2005 at the age of 78. He would be buried alongside his wife, Martha Doe Roberts, at the Memorial Park Cemetery in Memphis, Tennessee.